All right, hey class. What I've got for you here right now is a little lesson on the Texas Indians. This is going to start our lesson for the week. And what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about Texas Indians as they relate to the regions of Texas. And if you recall, so what I've got over here on the right, okay, now this is broken down, this image is broken down into the subregions, but it still identifies the four regions of Texas. So you can see the mountains and basins. You can see the Great Plains right here. You can see that this is the north central region. And this green over here is the coastal region. And if you compare these regions of Texas next to this map where it shows the Native Americans and where they live, we can see where the different tribes live. Okay, and what I want you to focus on right now, on the left map, I want you to focus on three tribes: the Wichita, the Caddo, and the Atakapans. Okay, and we can see that between these three, they're all kind of right in here, right? Between the coastal plains and the north central plains. All right, because this group of three Indian tribes makes up what we call the Southeastern culture area groups. Okay, the Southeastern culture area. And that's what we're talking about this week. We're going to talk about the culture areas. And just like Texas is divided into four regions, there are four culture area groups. And right now I want to focus on the Southeastern culture area group. Okay, so what you see here, I'm in your textbook and I've put these pictures over here on the right. So this way you can kind of look and see the regions of Texas. At the same time, you can see where the Native Americans live. And as I told you, we're going to be focusing on the Wichita, the Caddos, and the Atakapas. Okay, so we're over here in the coastal region and we're into part of the North Central Plains region. All right, now over here I'm in your textbook. Okay, so this is page 75 in your textbook, and we're talking about the Southeastern culture area. All right, and specifically, it starts with the Caddos. Okay, so you can kind of reference back and forth if you need to. Couple things we want to emphasize for these three groups. And in the Southeastern culture group, we're primarily dealing with Native Americans who farm. Okay, I'm not going to go through and read the text. You can see that I've actually highlighted. So when I flip through these pages, and you have the same ability to do that using notes, okay? You can just play around with it. But it says right here, the Caddos, okay? This is the group that lives right over here, all right? This is probably in the Piney Woods area, okay? Primarily farming. A lot of emphasis on farming, okay? They talk about permanent settlements. That's another common feature between these two group or these three native tribes in this area. With the Caddos, they speak specifically to crop rotation, which is planting different crops on different parts of the land so that you don't wear the soil out. Okay, that's an important piece. When you thumb through this, and I want you to read through the text, okay, because you're going to learn some additional things. I'm not going to go through all of it, but here again, valued farming. Okay, so farming is very important. This was one of the vocabulary words at the front of the text, okay? Confederacies. So they lived together, even though they were on the same team, but just the teams sometimes had different names. They're all Caddo, but the Confederacy is like another team. It says here it's defined as a loose association of group who work together, okay? Allies. These are friends, people who get along together, okay? Support one another. Caddos are a matrilineal society. That basically means that families are traced through their mother's side. Okay, typically in America, we're a patriarchal society, meaning that we trace our family lines through our father. Right, women take the man's last name. So matrilineal is for mother, M for mother, matrilineal, and patriarch for father. Okay, what else do we have here? They built temples. This is important for the Caddos. Okay, and an example I gave last year, and if I can show it here, I will. But the Caddos built temples, or these large mounds in the ground, and they used them for religious purposes. Okay, they were burial sites. Okay, they talk here about hunting. You're going to see that time and again with these different tribes. bows and arrows, buffalo, deer. Okay, Caddo built homes from wooden poles covered with grass, and in some cases they were even plastered with mud. So they lived in permanent settlements. Okay, permanent settlements. Another important piece of information for the Caddos, look down here. It says, I'm at the bottom of the page, the Europeans came to know the Caddos as Tejas, and of course we know that Texas in Spanish is Tejas. So if you ever wanted to know where the name came from, well, you just learned, right? The Caddo Indians that lived over in the coastal plains were referred to as Tejas, and that is where Texas gets its name, okay? As we move through, we talk about the Wichitas. Look at the Wichitas. They're over here, okay? They're in the north central plains of Texas. Okay, Europeans brought horses, so that's what you're looking at here. It says the Wichitas and other groups first got horses from the Spanish, which that'll be the next lesson we talk about when we talk about early explorers. Okay, so where did they live? Along the Red River, right? This right up here is the Red River, and they lived right here. Okay, kind of in our backyard. This is where we live, right? We're living right here, somewhere between the rolling plains and the cross timbers, and so Wichita, if you've ever heard of Wichita Falls, so you're also going to find in Texas that a lot of the names that we have in the state, Austin, Houston, Wichita Falls, you're gonna learn the history behind some of these names. Travis County, for example, we'll talk about that. It says the Wichitas also lived in permanent villages. Okay, they lived near creeks and rivers. Why would it be important to settle near creeks and rivers? They tattooed their bodies just like the Caddos. And this is notable for the Wichita. They were known as raccoon eyes. Because they would tattoo their eyelids. Okay, so it looked like they had raccoon eyes. And then the last group is the Atakapas. All right, they lived, where are we at? Down here. You see this? And it's right on the coast. So probably in this region, right? Between the piney woods and the Gulf Coast Plain. They lived inland. This outer edge is inland. Okay, and this edge is along the coast, obviously. They had good land for farming if they were inland, but if they were closer to the coast, the farming was not so good, right? And I know in here it talks about right here. So when they lived closer to the coast, the land was marshy, the salt water sometimes flooded the land, and so farming was impossible. So what do you think they did if they didn't farm? They probably fished because they're near the coast. And if you read right here, you'll see they caught fish. They used canoes to gather shellfish. So they were plucking their food from the ocean water. Okay, so if they lived inland, so you got the Wichita and the Caddos. Okay, they're living on the land. They're not near the coast. They're farming. They're hunting a little bit, but they're primarily farmers. The Atakapas are primarily farmers. It says their most important crop was corn, but those who lived closest to the coast were also catching fish and gathering shellfish from the bottom of the coast. They lived in huts made from brush, but they did have homes, mainly made from wooden poles, reed mats, brush, leaves, dried leaves, and this type of thing. But they were their permanent homes. In other words, they didn't travel all around. And I'm going to leave it here for the Southeastern culture group. Join us in the next video. We're going to talk about the Western Gulf culture area.